Namaste. We would be reading about ABG, its evaluation and its interpretation. ABG stands for arterial blood gas, and so the sample that we draw out is an arterial blood sample. And radial artery being a superficial artery, the sample is usually taken out from that. The importance of ABG is because it is available as an important bedside investigative tool all the times. The results of it are available in short interval as compared to the stat lab values, which takes relatively longer time. The importance of ABG is because it will help us in establishing a diagnosis. It will not pinpoint towards one diagnosis, but a differential diagnosis. And so it is important for us to know the clinical history of the patient so that we can come down to one diagnosis. It will guide us in the treatment plan related to oxygenation or ventilation requirements of the patient. Few medications like the vasopressors, they would not act at the extremes of pH. A knowledge of ABG, a knowledge about the pH status and optimization of the pH will help us in making maximum efficacy of the medications. Few electrolyte levels also change with the acid-base levels. And there are few parameters that are available to us when we customize the machine according to the desired parameters. For example, the anion gaps, the lactates, the hemoglobin or the electrolytes. Now it is important that we do not directly depend upon the first values of these extra parameters that are available to us in one go. The first ABG report needs to be correlated to the stat lab values, and if the two of them are in sync with each other, then we can depend upon these extra parameters values in the sequential ABGs. One more important thing is it is not one value of ABG, but it is the trend of ABG values that is important and that will help us guide our management. How to read and interpret an ABG? Before taking this slip into our hand and starting to interpret it, again, I would like to re-emphasize the importance of obtaining a relevant clinical history of the patient. And only then we should order and then we should start interpreting the ABG results. The overall ABG values, the parameters that are mentioned here can be broadly divided into three clusters. The first cluster is of pH, PCO2 and bicarbonate. This cluster will help us evaluate whether a deranged pH is because of a respiratory cause or a metabolic cause. The second cluster is of pH, PCO2 and PO2. This will help us in directing the ventilation and oxygenation strategy of the patients. The third cluster that is available is the electrolyte. There are normal values of electrolytes that are mentioned on the ABG, and correlating these electrolytes of the patient with the normal values, we can figure out dyselectrolemias and manage it accordingly. Before we send the sample, we should always know the mode of breathing that the patient is on, whether the patient is on room air or any oxygenation device, nasal prongs, or a non-invasive ventilatory device, or is on a ventilator. Along with that, it is important to mention the FiO2. How do we calculate this FiO2? We will come to see in the next few slides. Now we take upon the first cluster, which is the pH, PCO2 and the bicarbonate. There are three steps in interpreting the respiratory or metabolic component which is responsible for a deranged ABG. The first step is to interpret the pH. The normal value of pH is between 7.35 as in this ABG. If the pH goes down, which is seen by the arrow besides the value, it is acidemic. If the pH goes above 7.45, it is rising high, so it is alkalemic. After we have read and decided the pH, the second step is to read the PCO2 before taking a look upon the bicarbonate. Why PCO2 first? Because the respiratory system compensates faster. Along with that, it is easy for us to intervene and manage the PCO2 levels. The normal value of PCO2 is between 35 to 45 millimeter of mercury. If pH goes down, that is it becomes acidemic, and the PaCO2 values goes above 45. So the pH and the PaCO2, they are in the opposite direction. And now this acidemia is because of primarily respiratory acidosis. Like in this example, the pH has gone down, the PaCO2 has moved above 45. So they are in the opposite direction. So this acidemia is primarily because of respiratory acidosis. In a similar way, if pH becomes high, alkalemic, and the PaCO2 goes less than 35, then the primary cause of this alkalemia is a respiratory alkalosis. Once we have read the PaCO2, the third step is to read the bicarbonate values. The normal value of bicarbonate is between 22 to 26. If pH and bicarbonate, they move in the same direction, either they move down or they move up, the primary cause of a deranged pH in that case is going to be metabolic. For example, here the pH has moved down. The PaCO2 has also moved down, so they are not moving in the opposite direction. That means this acidemia is not because of respiratory cause. Now let us look at the bicarbonate. The bicarbonate values have gone down. So bicarbonate and pH, they are moving in the same direction. So this acidemia is primarily because of metabolic. In a similar way, if the pH and bicarbonate values, they move up, the alkalemia is primarily because of metabolic component. Our body always tries to maintain homeostasis, and so one system will always try to compensate for the other system. The bicarbonate and PaCO2 will always move in the same direction if one system is trying to compensate the other system. Like here, the pH is acidemic, the CO2 has moved up, so this is primary respiratory acidosis. The normal values of bicarbonate is 26, but here the bicarbonate values are increasing. So the metabolic component is trying to compensate for the respiratory derangement. So here the bicarbonate and PaCO2, they are both moving in upward direction. So they are trying to compensate for each other. In a similar way, here it is alkalemic. The PaCO2 has gone down, and similarly the bicarbonate values are also going less than 22. So the metabolic component is trying to compensate for the respiratory alkalemia. Now what if the bicarbonate and the PaCO2, they move in the opposite direction? Then the deranged pH is because of a mixed disorder. Here the pH is acidemic. The PaCO2 is moving up, so we know that the cause is a respiratory acidemia. Had it been only one primary cause, that is of respiratory, the bicarbonate should also have moved upwards to compensate for the respiratory acidosis. But here we see the bicarbonate values are also going down. So the PaCO2 and bicarbonate, they are moving in the opposite direction. Hence this acidemia is because of both metabolic as well as respiratory cause. Now we move on to the second cluster, which is the pH, the PaCO2 and the PO2. The normal values of partial pressure of oxygen is between 70 to 80 millimeter of mercury on room air, which is FiO2 of 0.2 or 20% oxygen, which we breathe. The range of 70 to 80 has been given because as the age increases from 30 years to about 70 years, the normal value of PO2 will decrease from 80 to 70. So a range of between 70 to 80 on room air is normal. The normal value of PaCO2 is less than 45 millimeters of mercury. Now let us presume that the patient's PO2 and SpO2, they are decreasing. We see the monitor, we find that the saturation is going down, and we order ABG and we see that the PO2 is also going less than 70 or 80. But the pH and PaCO2, they seem to be normal or at least near normal. So here only oxygenation is getting compromised, and so we need to start the patient on an oxygenation device. The first oxygenation device that we use is the nasal prong, which will deliver oxygen at a rate from the flow of between 2 to 5 liters. We should not deliver it above 5 liters. And the room air FiO2 of 0.2 can be taken up to 0.4, or 40% of oxygen can be delivered through nasal prong. If despite this 5 liters of oxygen through nasal prong, the patient's SpO2 and PO2 is not improving, or after some time starts to deteriorate, then we move on to the next oxygenation device, which is a face mask. we can deliver the oxygen flow from 5 to 10 liters, and it will increase the FiO2 to about maximum 0.6 or 60% of oxygen. Now, once the patient is on face mask, it is important for us to take out the ratio between the PO2 of the ABG values and the FiO2. Like here, if a PO2 of 80 is achieved at FiO2 of 0.6, then the ratio of 80 upon 0.6 would be somewhere about 140 to 150. Once this ratio of PO2 FiO2, it falls less than 150 at FiO2 of 0.6 or more, then we start asking the patient to do awake repositioning. We ask the patient to lie prone, left or right recumbent, or get up for some time. So we try and ask the patient to change the position. Despite this, if the patient does not improve, then the next oxygenation device is a face mask using a reservoir bag. We deliver the oxygen flow of greater than 10 liters, and the maximum FiO2 achievable is between 80 to 90%. After this, despite this, if the patient is not improving, we move on to high frequency nasal oxygen, which will deliver FiO2 of 100% or 1. The HFNC will also take care of mild acidosis, respiratory acidosis. Now, what if the PO2 is less than 60? The pH is not just mildly, but it is moving towards moderate acidosis. The pH is falling less than 7.3. The PCO2 is moving above 50, and the patient is developing respiratory acidosis despite HFNC. That means that the patient is having a ventilation failure, and now we have to decide upon giving a non-invasive or an invasive ventilation to the patient. To provide non-invasive ventilation to a patient, the two important criteria are signs of respiratory distress, that is tachypnea, exhaustion, or the patient showing signs of autonomic features like sweating, increase of heart rate. If all these signs of respiratory distress are present, along with PO2 FiO2 ratio of less than 200 and the PaCO2 rising above 45, that is respiratory acidosis precipitating, this classifies a patient for a non-invasive ventilation. Now, when we apply this non-invasive ventilation, there are few criteria that we need to fulfill. First, the patient should not be comatose, should not be unconscious. He or she should not be in a situation where there are chances of aspiration or facial trauma. And the patient should have her or his own respiratory drive. They should not be hypoventilating. So if the patients, they fulfill these criteria, then we are good to go with a non-invasive ventilation. Despite this, if the patient's PO2 keeps on falling to less than 40, the PCO2 keeps on increasing above 50, and the pH is now moving from moderate to severe acidosis, it is going less than 7.25, it's high time that we do start the patient on invasive ventilation and we intubate the patient. As we have moved up the ladder, once the patient is settled on an invasive ventilation, we also now need to move down the ladder. On invasive ventilation, if we see that the patient's PO2 has now improved to above 60 millimeters of mercury, the value of PaCO2 has come down and less than 50 millimeter of mercury, we are able to bring down the FiO2 to less than 0.5. The PO2 FiO2 ratio has improved to more than 200. And we see that the clinical respiratory parameters of the patient is improving. The respiratory rate has settled down. The patient is now generating a good amount of tidal volume. We do not see any signs of exhaustion. So it is time that we de-escalate the patient from invasive ventilation to a non-invasive ventilation to an oxygenation device, maybe further down to nasal prongs and then off oxygen. Coming down to the third cluster, as I've said, that we can see the electrolytes on the ABG and we can correlate it with the normal electrolyte values. We can figure out the dyselectrolemia and then we can rectify the dyselectrolemia. Let us look at few examples related to oxygenation ventilation using ABG as a modality, or how does it change our management. This is a patient who has a pH of 7.336, is on nasal prongs of maximum 5 liters. So this is and the PCO2 is less than 31.2. So both of them are moving in the same direction. So this acidemia is not because of primarily respiratory acidosis. But we see that the PO2 is 52.7. So the pH and PCO2, they are near normal, but the PO2 is significantly less. So it is time that we escalate the oxygenation device and we move a step ahead from nasal prong to a face mask. Once the patient is on face mask, we see that the pH has improved, the PCO2 has improved, and the PO2 also has improved. So are we satisfied now? Yes, we are satisfied. Here, an ABG of a patient shows a PCO2 of 46.5, a pH of 7.63, but a PO2 of 29.3, which is alarmingly low. We see that the saturation of the patient is 52.9. We are worried. But when we look at the patient, this patient is normally talking, is on room air, is not exhausted, and is very comfortable. So this is not an ABG sample, this is a venous sample. And here lies the importance of looking at the patient and relating it clinically with the patient rather than just only looking at the ABG values. The last example is a patient who is on a face mask of maximum 10 liters, that is FiO2 of 0.6 has been achieved. The patient's pH seems to be normal, the PCO2 also is normal, but the PO2 is 92.7 at FiO2 of 0.6. So we calculate the PO2 FiO2. It is important that as soon as the patient comes on a face mask, we always calculate the PO2 FiO2 ratio. And if, like here in this example, the PO2 FiO2 ratio is somewhere between 150 to 160. So now it is time that we ask the patient to start awake repositioning and also prepare the next step, which is a face mask with the reservoir mark, so that we are readily prepared with what to do next. So these were few examples where ABG can help us guide our management. Thank you.